Hello and welcome to the London Something podcast with myself, DJ Ron, and thank you in advance for joining us today. Thanks to those of you who have liked, commented, shared and subscribed. We really appreciate your support, as by doing so, it helps our channel grow and reach so many more people. A special shout out to our sponsor, West End DJ, who with their continued support help us provide more of these episodes documenting the culture of jungle and drum and bass. Check out the link below and use our London Something code to get a discount for the best in DJ and sound equipment for all your needs. My guest today shares her remarkable story of manifestation. From a young child singing in the mirror on a dairy farm in New Zealand to touring the world with one of the most globally recognised jungle and drum and bass acts, we welcome the First Lady of Full Cycle, MC Tali. You saying Tali all right, yeah?
Kia ora, bro. Good to see you.
Feels funny shaking your hand.
I know.
Feels funny.
You do.
Hello, how are you? Anyway, Tali, thanks for coming. I know you haven't come specifically for the podcast, but you still come a long, long way.
Yeah.
To be here, to work, support your husband, which we'll get into that later on as well.
Yeah.
For the gigs that he's doing over here and what have you.
Yeah.
But we were saying earlier how I mean, I think it's over 20 years since the last time.
I think so.
It is, yeah, I'm right,
I reckon. Well, I left the UK in about 2012. Okay, and then I probably hadn't seen you for maybe like 5 years before that, so it's easily going to be.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
It's funny how that is, isn't it? It's like, there's something, for me anyway, I hope it's the same for everybody else, but there's something about that, our early sort of like connection, that it doesn't actually matter that it was 20 years ago.
No.
How wild is that?
I know. I feel like the best connections are the ones where you can not see a person for a really long time.
Yeah.
It just feels like you say, "What's up, bro?"
Yeah, it was that. Yeah, which how it has been. This was all happening off camera, by the way. Like, yo, what's up, man? Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Tali, you know, everybody kind of knows you, and your sort of career ascension was through that whole sort of like full cycle era. Mm-hmm. And what an era it was, you know, a great time in the history of this game it was.
Indeed.
But we're going to get round to that. I know you've done a number of different interviews before. So for me, I'm like, I like to find out the earliest sort of like memories of the person sat in front of me. I mean, the fact that you were from New Zealand,
Yeah.
I mean, it makes me feel as though you're going to be telling me some stuff that I'm not aware of, like that might be quite different to UK. So fire away. What are some of your earliest memories, like growing up as a young girl in New Zealand?
I grew up on a dairy farm. I grew up in a beautiful province called Taranaki with a mountain with a peak that looks a bit like Mount Fuji and a smaller peak, surrounded by countryside and then ocean.
Wow.
It kind of comes out on a peninsula, so you've got the mountain.
Really nice.
So I grew up surfing, but I also learned how to ski from not a really young age, because we couldn't really afford it until I was about high school age. But it was just a local mountain. It wasn't like anything with super chairlifts or anything like that. It was just a rope tow kind of thing, and you went up and down, that was it kind of thing. And then you could go surfing in the evenings, you could ski in the morning and surf in the afternoon, or the other way around. So the mountain was like a very domineering presence in my life, I guess. I'm the youngest of four. There's 9 years between me and my oldest brother. So he was gone out of the house by the time I sort of, came into my own, and my middle brother didn't really want to have anything to do with me. And my sister, she's 3 years older than me, and I was just a pain in the ass to her. So I spent a lot of time on my own. Obviously you would have some kids come to play now and then, but a vast majority of my childhood was just on my own. So just running around the farm with my dog, climbing trees, building dams, singing songs, making up poems, doing pretend acceptance speeches with a piece of wood, just all the weird typical things that a really creative, overly active, imaginative young child on a farm would do, I suppose.
It sounds picturesque the way you've described it, with the mountain and the dairy farm and whatever. I mean, it's so far removed it's so far removed from how I know you, because I didn't even know that. So you said your eldest brother, he left from a long time ago. When he say left, he just left the household, not the country.
No, he left the house. So like in New Zealand, it's kind of like quite standard that when you reach between the ages of 16 and 18, you're out the house. You're out no one's living at home with their parents, especially not on the farm. Like my mum and dad, like, yes, the last one's nearly, she's nearly 18 and then she'll be gone. You know, like you don't stay at home. Well, there's nothing to do unless you're going to stay at home to take on the farming roles. You're out the house. And if you want to go anywhere and do anything with your life, you're off the farm. You're even out the region. You know, so you're off to the big smoke 5 hours away. So,
you know, again, it conjures up these, you know what, it's funny you speaking, it conjures up these images and these stories from movies where somebody's from this sort of like the countryside, and then they're just like aspiring to leave and go into the city and become somebody.
Absolutely, that was my life. And like I said, from a young age, I used to write songs. Like I had a piano. My parents bought me a piano. So we don't have a lot of money for a vast period of my life. My mother made all our clothes. We grew all our own fruit and vegetables. And when it was sort of obvious that I was musical and I was getting into singing and piano, my parents bought a secondhand piano with lots of the ivories missing. So there was just like big strips of glue where they'd like tried to stick the ivories back on and they'd come off. And I'm like playing, you know, like just my fingers like scraping on these big bits of glue on the keys. A terrible like honky tonk piano, you know, like one of those ones that makes that dusty old sound. And that's what I learned to write songs on. And from a young age, I did aspire to be a musician. I wanted to be like a musician or an actor. I knew I wanted to do something that would involve being on the stage, maybe musical theatre, that kind of thing. And I used to write songs, used to write poems, and then I would always imagine what my acceptance speech would be. Like who I would think. You know, I must be like 7 or 8 years old, but these were aspirations that I had. And as I got older and older, and the farm, even though it was wide, you know, like a big open space, it almost felt claustrophobic because my desire was I wanted to live in the city. I wanted to know what city life was. And when I started learning about London and in particular English music, I used to have these fantasies of like what it would be like to wake up in London, walk out on the street in the hustle and bustle of London, you know. And living in New Zealand now, having moved back there, every time I come back to London and I have that first stepping out of the tube or the train into London life, it all comes rushing back to me. The feeling, the adrenaline, the excitement, the fear, you know, all of it that is a part of living in a city.
And listening to your story, how I was this 8-year-old girl, how remote can you be on a dairy farm in New Zealand?
Not even in a city.
Yeah, not even in a city. To then be travelling the world with probably one of the most iconic drum and bass artists of all time.
I know.
So I think it's fascinating manifestation of that. That belief that you're going to be there one day. So you're 8 years old on this farm. What was school life? What was that all about? Because I'm assuming if you lived on a farm, your neighbours were it was very distant.
So my school consisted of 2 classrooms. There was 25 students. That was it.
Across the 2 classes? Right, okay.
The big room and the little room. So you were in the little room until you were 11 or 10, and then you graduated to the big room and you were there for 10, 11, 12. And then there was no intermediate or middle school, as Americans call it. You know, you just went straight to high school. So if you can imagine, you're in a primary school of 25 kids where everybody knows everybody's name.
Course,
we know all each other's families and everything. And then suddenly you go to a high school, and I thought it was so big. 400 students. Right. 400 students on the coast. So I used to get on a school bus and travel for 25 minutes through, you know, farmland, all the way to the coast. And my high school was in this little town called Opunaki, which is perched on the edge of a cliff. I took surfing as a school sport. It was rough as guts. It was a rough school.
Great. It sounds amazing.
It was a rough school, but it was great because there was a really strong Māori culture. So I learned a lot about, you know, our Indigenous culture and tikanga Māori, which is the customs and, you know, a bit of the language and stuff like that. So that set me in good stead. So even though it was like a small, rough school, you know, all us coastal kids with our snotty noses and our ripped jumpers, you know, that our mums had stitched back together, you know, we out of that school and out of that area, a lot of people have gone on to achieve great success because I think situations where maybe you don't have a lot or opportunities are scarce can also give rise to some really incredible, tenacious and ambition, people like that. People like me, I guess.
Yeah, no, very true. So yeah, you're right. I couldn't picture what it was like there, but you've drawn a real good picture for me of how challenging it must be. It's really
interesting because people think that, when I first came here to the UK, and especially when I first got into drum and bass, I know what people looked at me and thought.
What did you think they thought?
I think they thought, little rich white girl come here from New Zealand, like quite a beautiful
That's interesting.
And probably just come here and who does she think she is? Oh,
Really?
she wants to be at MC. Oh, well, there were definitely people that thought that about me for sure.
Right. Okay.
And treated me like that.
Right.
And
that's
I may not
interesting.
be from the streets,
But you're from
I'm from
particular
the
street.
farm.
Yeah.
I'm from one horse street.
Yeah,
I ain't from the
yeah.
streets, but I'm from one lane road, And I think it's interesting how people perceive what people perceive as challenging. I was lucky in that I had a beautiful family. My parents really supported me and really looked after me, and I was very privileged in that sense. But obviously, as you pointed out, being where I was from presented its own series of challenges and obstacles for me that I had to get over. My high school did not have a music department. It wasn't like I had some amazing music teacher. My mum and dad saved all their money to send me to a music teacher in a whole nother town, Hawara. My mum and I every Wednesday would get in the car and we'd sing songs and tell stories. My mum's amazing. She's this artist. She's an incredible woman. And she would drive me to singing lessons to this woman, Julie Cudby, this beautiful, beautiful woman who I just remember she had a brown afro of hair. She's mixed heritage, but she was adopted, so she didn't even know where she was from. She's this beautiful brown-skinned woman with a slash of red lipstick and these big black glasses, and her and I just connected, and she took me under her wing, and she was the first person who really brought out the musician in me. She taught me, I used to enter in singing competitions, and she taught me how to be a graceful, humble loser and an even more gracious winner. I remember the first time I lost and I was like, and she was
Son of a bitch.
Yeah, she was like, get up and you go over and you congratulate that little girl, So it's just interesting how people have a perception of you when they meet you, but if you really dig deep, and it's interesting because not a lot of people have asked me these questions and wanted to go this deep. We sort of tend to go back as far as me meeting Ronnie Size, or yes, I went to drama school, but the struggles from a young age were definitely there, but I was raised by really great parents who taught me to take every opportunity and say yes to things. So I was actually really lucky in that respect,
Yeah, I only as you've literally sat here, I've never ever considered it. I've never considered. That's why when you said, these people think this rich white girl from blah blah blah, and I said, really, you think people think like that? I never ever even considered where you came from. All I considered was, right, she's, and that was it. She's with Ronnie Sides and she's
nice.
emceeing.
She's doing
She's
that.
cool, she's doing her thing.
Yeah.
It's only as you've sat in the chair, and even with me knowing that you were from, I was saying earlier that I thought you were from Australia or New Zealand, but even with you sat in the chair, it's only as you've sat in the chair that I've gone, this must be quite interesting to know how, I didn't think about it before.
Yeah.
Only as you sat there, I'm like, this must be quite interesting because she would have been a little girl in New Zealand.
Yeah.
It would have been very different to any other little girl in this country.
Yeah.
And then you're from a farm.
Yeah.
So then, wow, you're from a farm, and the
With
backdrop
no
of
musical family.
Yeah, and the backdrop of that, there's no Bob Marley playing in the background. Do you know what I mean?
A bit of hot chocolate.
Yeah.
Some ABBA,
So
Fleetwood
it's
Mac.
great. This is really, I could tell this is going to be really interesting to kind of explore more of this, because obviously at some point within that window of time before you meet this lovely singing instructor, if that's the right way to
singing teacher.
Singing teacher, you and your mother and your father, maybe your entire family kind of had an idea, hey, she's talented in some way.
Yeah.
So tell me a bit about that.
Well, I think it was just that, so my parents used to throw massive house parties on the farm, and all the locals would come to the house parties. So I actually remember growing up, like being asleep and hearing like a rager going on, you know, the drinking, the singing, the clinking of beer bottles, you know. I can remember getting up in my little nightie and going down the hallway and everybody's in there just wasted. Like they used to drink so much. I was talking about this with my friend the other day about how our parents used to just drink and then everyone would get in their cars and drive home because they all live real far, dangerous, so bad, like you'd never do that now. But like, my parents used to throw these rages. I can actually remember like one night watching a conga line go out the back door, around the garden, and then back in through the front door.
Hey!
Hey! Oh my God! And so my mother always says that she remembers she's turned around and I was like in the middle of the dance floor dancing to like Meatloaf or something, singing, "You took the words right out of my mouth," and I knew like all the lyrics. And then she was like, "I found you an hour later asleep with your head pressed against the speaker," and I was like, raised an early raver, head against the speaker, you know. And my dad used to make mixtapes, so he had a belt-driven turntable and he with a cassette recorder, and he used to play like his favorite records and then press record and then stop. So it'd be terrible, like it'd be like, "I believe in miracles," playing "You Sexy Thing," and then it just stop and it goes straight into Rod Stewart, and then it would stop and go into Fleetwood Mac. So those were my dad's mixtapes.
Ah, sick.
But they just like, you know, they gave birth to this love in me of music, socializing, parties. So I guess I was exposed to that kind of environment from a young age. And then school choir, there was a community school choir where all the little primary schools from all around the districts, 25 students there, 30 students there, like none of these schools had more than 50 students. We'd all get together and we'd all sing in a school kind of choir. And I remember, well, I don't remember, but my mother tells me that she was sitting next to a woman who said to her, "You can hear your daughter above everybody, and she's singing in key. You should get her some singing lessons or something." And my mum was like, "Oh, okay." I was always wanting to be on stage. Like, so my mother used to do window dressing as a side job when she was a mum of 4, so just to bring in some more money for us. And she would take me as a little kid down to the local towns, there's Hawara and Eltham and Opunaki out to the coast, and she would dress the windows. And Mum said she would always be like, "Where are you?" And I'd be like standing in the window, or like swinging off the racks of clothes, singing to customers. My mum was just like, "You were such a nightmare." But you know, I just wanted that. I craved that, like, attention.
No,
Such a little
I can see why. I can see.
Imagine.
I can imagine. Knowing you, I can imagine what you were like doing that. So you do these singing lessons, and obviously your family and that are still like at home. Your siblings are still at home, I'd imagine. And so how is it now? How does that then develop as you get older, like broadening that into what might seem like any sort of desire to go a bit further than just singing in a classroom or in a school play?
So I was writing a lot of songs at home, and I was sharing them with my mum, and she was like, "These are really beautiful." And then it was her idea. She said there's a local recording studio just up a road near the mountain, right up near the mountain. The Mugridges, I can't remember his name, he's passed away now, but Mr. Mugridge had the studio, and he was like a bit of a hippie, and he'd made the studio in his house. Him and his wife sang in an Irish band or something, and Mum got wind that they had a recording studio, and she said, "Oh, my Natalia writes songs. She's written a song." I think I might have been like maybe 14 or 15, and Mum said, "Do you want to record it?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." So we went up to his studio, and I went into the booth, and even though I'd never been in a recording studio before, it just felt, as soon as I got in there, I was like, I'm at home. Like, this is exactly where I should be. He said that I think it was 13 or 14, maybe 15. He said that for somebody that age, he was like, "You just took instructions so well." He hardly had to tell me what to do. I knew where to stand, how to use my voice. But we recorded this demo, this song of mine. And then, I just like played it to some friends and they recorded it and passed it around, and everyone was like, this is really good, like you should get into singing. So I did sing at school a little bit, at high school a little bit. I sang on stage with the Hawara Repertory. My singing teacher got me to audition for some roles for some variety shows. You know, I sang from Les Miserables and Cats and stuff like that. You know, just little,
Wow.
little teenage spots. But everybody was like, you're really good and you need to do this. But for me, it was the recording of my own music and the acknowledgement of my own writing abilities that really kind of sparked that passion in me to want to do it. I got accepted for university, and I didn't even really want to go to university, bro. Like, I just was not that big on my radar. I wanted to be a singer. I wanted to leave school and become a musician, but you can't do that in New Zealand, really. And also, I was the first person in my family to be accepted to university. So it was like, you're going, you know?
What did you want to go and read at university? What was you going to do?
I should have done music. I don't know why I didn't. I already had my grade 8 theory, so I'd done all my exams. I'd done piano exams and singing exams side by side.
Let's take a pin in it for a second. Because you were at this school, which was like 25 people. Then you're at high school, which is a 400.
Yeah.
And then so where does the grading of the come from?
Mrs. Cudby, Julie Cudby.
Okay, so the lady,
my
right?
beautiful
Okay,
teacher,
yeah.
So she was the one that says you need to do exams.
Yes.
So I started at grade 6 singing. I didn't even do 1, 2, 3, or 5. You could start quite high. So I started at 6 and did 6, 7, 8. And then piano, I did 1 right through to grade 6. I didn't go any further than that just because my fingers weren't long enough to reach the chords. But I know music theory, so I learned how to sing classical. I learned how to sing in German, Italian, really badly.
And this was all through this woman?
This was all through Julie. So she just really saw in me. I mean, she was an incredible teacher.
So it must have been years with her.
I was with her from the age of 11 right through to 18.
I was going to say, this must be years because...
So I did English literature. Theatre and film. In my first year, I did like English and education. It was just like a filler paper. So English was like, you know, English literature, reading lots of books and writing about them, which I enjoyed because I loved writing. I loved writing poems, stories, and songs. I guess I should rewind just a little bit and say, like, in terms of lyricism and how did I become an MC? Well, when I was at high school, I used to write raps for my friends. So I started to get into American music, like hip hop music mainly, I guess.
At what age are we talking here?
We're talking like 13 and 14.
And so just tell me what year that was roughly, do you think? I know it's a bit difficult. I
think maybe like 19.
Okay, no, tell me what sort of rap.
Oh, so 90s, early 90s. So I guess some of my earliest influences were like Moni Love and Dimples D and De La Soul.
Okay, yeah, so I kind of get what era. So it's kind of like very early 90s.
Very early 90s. From late 80s, early 90s.
Exactly,
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So I guess that was just like, and I discovered that music just through listening to, we had the countdown every Friday night. It was called the Coca-Cola Ready to Roll. It was called Ready to Roll, and then it got tuned to RTR. And, you know, we'd all rush home from school to see what was going to be number 1 that week, and if it was going to be MC Hammer again.
It's funny that you had your version of that all the way the other side of the planet, when over in this country they had identical thing, which was Radio 1's Top 40 Countdown or something like that.
No, what was it on telly? You had Top of the Pops.
No, we had Top of the Pops, but that was the radio version.
Oh, right.
Were you talking
No,
about
I'm
the
talking
TV?
about TV.
Okay, yeah, so we had Top of the Pops as our TV version of
you
that.
know, like music television was like, I remember when Max Headroom and music television was really blowing up, and so we'd rush home to watch who it was going to be. And first of all, I was like really into just pop music. Like I loved Kylie and Madonna and Tina Turner, and you know, like I just was kind of into just female pop music and a bit of rock. Like I liked Bon Jovi and Bros. And then I loved all the music.
Was Bros rock?
Well, no, pop.
Pop.
But I loved all the music that my brothers and sisters loved.
Okay, yeah.
Right? But when I turned 13, I remember my sister played me this record that changed my life, Soul to Soul.
Okay.
And that's when I stopped being so American-centric with my direction and actually became more UK focused with my music.
Was it Back to Life or one of those?
Back to Life, and it's like that's my karaoke song. No, my karaoke song is Back to Life.
Okay.
That's my karaoke number. But yeah, so soul to soul, but also like I loved I loved UK music as a whole. So my sister listened to like Duran Duran and Sinead O'Connor and Sade. My mother's friend, who I used to be babysat by, she got me into Grace Jones. I was 8 years old when I saw my first Grace Jones cover, the one of her with the cigarette in her mouth. And I remember saying, she's beautiful. And then I was like, is it a lady? And she was like, yeah, it's a lady. And I was like, the androgyny I'd never been exposed to. And she put it on.
Grace didn't play around, you know that.
She put on Pull Up to the Bumper. And 8-year-old me was like, mind blown. What is this voice? What is this music? You know? But the lyricism, I used to listen to rap and hip hop, and I used to write the lyrics down. You know how you'd write the lyrics down so that you could rap the lyrics word for word to your, you knew it all, right? And I would do it, and as I was writing the words, I guess I was learning rhyme sequencing and lyrics, you know, like the structure of how to rap. And the other thing was that I was never the smart girl or the pretty girl at school. I was always very short, very skinny, flat-chested. I got bullied a lot. And words kind of became my weapon. So when people would give me shit, I could retort back something. I would snap back really fast. And then the other thing I would do was I would write raps for my friend about their trainers or their t-shirt and make them laugh. And that's when I sort of realized the power of words. So that combined with my love of beats, you know, because we're not dance music at this stage, but just the beats, was sort of like the early beginnings of that. And so then, you know, next thing you know, I'm at uni and I'm like, why did I not study music? So I did English lit and education. And my lyricism and my poetry writing kind of got put on the back burner.
You know, you said earlier, you said, it was being on the farm, it was very lonely. Yeah. Being on the farm, you're on your own. Did you find that as time went by, that changed dramatically, not necessarily just because of the rap, but just generally by virtue of you going to places you hadn't been before? In fact, what I'm saying is, was it just because you were on the farm that you were lonely, or were you that sort of person anyway, even when you went off to do the singing lessons, when you went off to the other school, when you went off to uni?
You know, it's a really interesting question because I do think there's always been an element of me that's felt like an outsider and never really felt like I knew where I belonged or fitted in. A lot of things that I was really into, my friends weren't necessarily into. Or I didn't feel like they were as passionate about wanting to know the lyrics to Ring, 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 like De La Soul like I did, or I just didn't feel like they were on the same wavelength as me. And when I went to uni, a big part of remember when I said to you I didn't really like uni, I just felt like it was drink beer and go to house parties and stand around a handbag and dance to like really mediocre music. And I just didn't want to do that. I used to leave my friends at the club where we were on the strip, you know, the main street where all the clubs were. We'd go there. In Wellington, Wellington, the capital, so I'm at Victoria University. I used to leave them and go off by myself and go to Cuba Street, which is a really cool alternative part of Wellington. I walked by myself all the way along, big strides with my leather jacket on, like no one's stopping me. And go to Cuba Street and find some like obscure jazz punk fusion band and watch them, or go to the local hip hop club on my own with my fake ID. The bouncer knew my brother, so he let me in, and just go and listen to like Beastie Boys on my own, and just I always felt kind of like an outsider, and it wasn't until I got into rave music that I felt like I belonged somewhere.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, the reason I asked that was only because obviously there's a lot of years passed since you would have left the farm. And, you know, when I've spoken to other people, and even in my own life, you know, like I think that sometimes you find that you have to shoehorn friendships into your life because it's not really a part of you. I wanted to ask you a question. Did you apply for uni? Is that how, as you said, you were the first?
Yeah, you apply, but I got a B bursary, so according to your marks, you can get like...
it paid for.
You get a little bit of money to help go towards it, and so that was really helpful for my parents as well.
Yeah, of course.
So I went to uni, but I was, I only went for 2 years. I didn't finish. I didn't do my 3 years at Victoria because I failed the paper that I needed to pass to get into third year, which was theatre. and film. So like the full, Taika Waititi, the director who's directed Thor.
Yeah.
So he was a year ahead of me.
No way.
I used to see him around uni, and like he was doing the paper that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I failed.
Oh, wow.
I smoked too much weed, man. I was like, I was too hung up on like boys and socializing and going out and listening to music.
Catching up on
life that I'd missed out on the farm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a very innocent green young girl at uni. But it was great. Well, I'll tell you what was great about uni was the amount of shows. I saw Violent Femmes, I saw the Beastie Boys. We used to go to the big day outs, we'd hitchhike, go all the way up to Auckland from Wellington. I saw Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Offspring, The Prodigy. Like, it was sick, man. Like, my second year at uni, I can remember in gigs.
Funny enough, from what you just said about those gigs and whatever with the background of singing, smoking weed, I can imagine that you were scheming, how the hell what do I do next?
Definitely there's more to me than what this is what I kept thinking. I was like, there's got to be more than this. And everyone would be like, you got such a great voice. But it's so interesting. I didn't do anything with my singing or my acting ability while I was at uni other than just, I was in this weird musical, like community musical that I auditioned for and got into, and it was the only thing I did. But I enjoyed it and it was fun, but it was very small, But it was when I failed that paper and my mum was like, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to go back to uni and repeat it? And I said, nah, I'm done with Wellington. I don't even really like living in Wellington. It's quite cold and windy. And mum said to me, well, what about auditioning for drama schools? What about, having a go at some theatre schools around the country? So we looked it up. I thought that was brilliant because I was like, yes, that's
so
what I should be doing.
So you went back home to the farm?
Just for summer.
Yeah, okay.
Just for the summer holidays, and we talked about it. And we looked up, like, what was out there. And I auditioned, and my mum, bless her heart, she drove me to Auckland, and I auditioned for a school up there. I auditioned
How far was
for
that from where you
5
live?
hours.
That is mental. That's like driving to...
We didn't fly because we couldn't afford it, but she drove me. Drove me all that way.
Go on, Mum. Well done.
And we stayed with her friend up there, and it was a cool weekend. We went out for dinner, and I auditioned for the school. And then I auditioned for a school in Christchurch, which was in the South Island, but they were doing auditions in the North Island. So then she drove me all the way down to Palmerston, which was 2 hours, and I went down there and I auditioned for that, and I got into that school. So I then was getting ready to start my year in February to fly down to Christchurch, a place where I'd never lived. I only knew my second cousins very, very, distantly. Yeah, they were down there. I didn't really know anything about the school, so I pack up my troubles and away I go down to Christchurch. This is 1996 at this point.
96,
and 96,
yeah. That's mental. Yeah.
So previously when I'd been in Wellington, as part of me going out to these clubs that weren't the commercial music clubs, I started to go to this one club called Tattoo, where Clinton Smiley was DJing, and I got my first taste of house music, like acid house, and a little bit of happy hardcore kind of vibes there. And I went to see Massive Attack live, and so very dubby, very trippy. I remember we talk about drugs on here.
Of course you can.
I remember it was the first time I took acid.
Okay.
I took a quarter of a tab or a half of a tab or something and went and saw Massive Attack.
Another one of those.
And I was like, I want some more of this music. I was like, this is cool. So there was those little inklings.
Yeah.
But it was in Christchurch. I went to NASDA, the National Academy of Singing and Dramatic Arts. And at that school, you learn everything from rapier and dagger schools to accents, to Shakespeare, to ballet, to Tai Chi, tap dancing, musical theatre.
Sounds really fun.
It was wicked, but it was also like emotional rape. Like they crush your spirit and reduce you to ash in order to build you back up into the actor you should be. And so at times it was fucking hard, and they were sometimes to deal with the tutors there. But in other ways, it was amazing and liberating.
Right,
Did you remember that program Fame? Did you grow up with
of course I do. Yeah.
Mate, that was, I wanted to be at that school. And suddenly I was in my own version of Fame. It's pretty cool. But as well as that, I was living in the YMCA hostel with a whole lot of other students living there. And my roommate, she was a Christian. And she used to go to church every Sunday to the Baptist church, which was right in the centre of town. Big, one of those big, massive modern churches, you know, where everyone's like, yeah, singing it. And so she used to go to that, and she would walk in at 7 p.m. on a Sunday night, and she wouldn't get out till 10. And she didn't like walking home on her own. So I was like, I'll walk you to church. So I used to walk her to church, go to Java, which was the really cool coffee shop on the corner where all the kind of like cool people were hanging out, you know, and everyone was dressed a little bit differently, and there were flyers on the table like, come to this rave and da-da-da. And I remember I used to sit there with my hot chocolate and read these flyers and clock everybody who was coming in and listen to the music they were playing. And then Julie would come out of church, I'd pick her up and we'd walk home. And so I was slowly starting to get these little infiltrations happening. But there was this one night where we were walking home and we could hear this like doo 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 doo. We're like, what is that? We're like that cartoon, you know, where the cat follows the scent of the pie. We're like, what is this? And we went down these like side streets, down this alleyway, and there were all these people out in the alley. It was like 10 o'clock at night. It was still quite light. I think it was a summer's night. And we kind of like peeked around the corner, and there was people, and there was a DJ, and there was people dancing on the tables. And we were like, what is this? And they were like, oh, this is we're having a closing down party for this bar, but we're doing a rave next Saturday, you should come, and gave us a flyer. And we were like, this is cool. And everyone looked so cool the way they were dressed. And me and Julie were like, should we go? So yeah, the next Saturday we went along to some house and trance rave.
Poor Julie never looked back. Poor Julie never looked back.
No, but she loved it too. She was like, this is cool, this is different. Yeah. And so we started going to these all-genre raves.
And this was by virtue of that one flyer and then going to that one rave, and then from that one rave...
then we started going to Java and like picking up all the flyers and seeing what was going on. We moved out of the YMCA and we moved into this old loft apartment. They were old offices that had mezzanine floors, and there was like nothing in there. The kitchen was like as big as this DJ desk, like just a cupboard. Yeah. The toilet was also really small, but then you had this huge open space because it was old offices, and so we just have like massive parties in these lofts that we lived in.
Amazing.
And go raving and get ready there, and I had all the rave posters on my wall.
And this time you're in Christchurch now.
Yeah, Christchurch.
So now you're in the capital. Is that the capital?
No, Wellington was
where
the
I
were.
Yeah.
But Christchurch was the capital of dance music.
Yeah, was the coolest place.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
There was
That's the one I heard about.
The club called Ministry, you would have heard about.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So I remember like going to these all genre raves. Yeah, this was back when like Ed Rush came over and was playing speed hardcore, like, you know, before he was like real hard, fast breaks. It wasn't even like break beat at that time. It was that kind of morphing moment, moment. And then you get a few people like, I think Groove Rider came and played house. Okay. So they were like not doing drum and bass then at all. And then I remember going to this all genre rave one night, and it was about 2 a.m. It had been like house, and then trance was like the big genre. It was the headliner, and drum and bass was relegated to the end, or breaks. And I remember like this DJ got on. There was all this dry ice in the room. You can imagine the lights just go zoom. It's gone from all pink and purple to like the lights go right down, and there's this like shh sound, and then like through the smoke is this voice, in this world of mine, we must earn our chance to shine. Do you remember? Do what we feel is best. I was like, what is this? Maintain. I know what it is, and I got to maintain. It's like, I'm back there, bro. I've got goosebumps thinking about it. And then the beat drops, and I was just like, what the fuck is this? And that was when my love affair with drum and bass began. And
who was playing?
Silencer, local DJ. Okay. But I was hooked. From that minute, I was like, what is this music? I need to know more. And then from there, I sort of backpedaled and got into jungle, and then went forward a bit more. And we're talking like 96, 97. So then, of course, there is this explosion that happens in New Zealand where international DJs start coming over, Groove Riders playing drum and bass, Ed Rush and Optical, Dom and Roland, Doc Scott. They were the main ones that came. Ed Rush and Optical, Doc Scott and Groove Rider were the ones that came the most.
interesting listening to that timeline as well, because if New Zealand really got their first sniff of this culture
Around 95, 96.
around 95, 96, it had no choice but only go learn from that point on, unless the person who's listening was interested in listening where it came from.
Right?
And so therefore you'd only therefore have a history of this culture from that point onwards. You know, unless you decided, oh, I wonder where this music comes. No, nobody does that. It's like, who does that?
Well, New Zealanders, because we're sponges.
Right, yeah, yeah. I mean, but most people are just like, they just get on with it, and they just, this music, I'm going to get on with it.
Yeah.
You know, even with hip-hop, it's like, even in my earliest days of hip-hop, I'd be like, oh man, this thing, breakdancing, da-da-da, this, that and the other, electro, da-da-da, this, that and the other. And then go, I wonder who Cool Herc was. That came later on.
Right.
You know, you just get on with what was there at the time. And so it's actually quite interesting that if that was happening in New Zealand, that's quite likely that was happening around the rest of the world. That the rest of the world caught on to this music several years after it had already been in the UK. And
We had drum and bass first, in a way.
yeah.
And then we kind of went back a bit and were like, well, what's jungle? And then Sync came through and played like a full jungle gig. And
Right,
I couldn't go to it, and I like cried my eyes out.
So yeah, that's quite interesting in itself. That
Kind of came through at the same time. Jungle and drum and bass was kind of just coming
yeah, well,
through.
maybe it was because what it sounds to me like that whoever the promoters were seemed to from based on the talent that they were bringing over.
Yeah.
Sounds to me that they were leaning more within the drum and bass sphere.
Yeah.
Yes,
but then we were like, well, hang on a minute. Where's it come from?
Yeah. And that was the point I was making, is that if that was happening in New Zealand, you know, like you guys are the furthest away from us.
Yeah.
So definitely places like Germany, they would have been getting jungle straight, you know, pretty much almost straight after, not straight after, but, you know, like as soon as it blew up in this country, which I would say was really around about 93, going into 94.
Yeah. So we were only like a couple of years behind.
Yeah, so you're only a few years.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing about that is that unlike now, like I could say to you, oh, I ain't seen you in 20 years and we're still mates. Whoa, 20 years.
Yeah.
At that time, 2 years was a big deal.
Yeah, for sure.
2 years was a big deal. So from 91 to 92 was very, very, very different time to 91 and 93.
Yeah, hard out.
So you hear your local DJ play this music, Maintain, and you're like,
Yeah.
you're like, what is that, man?
Yeah. From then, I just got the hunger. And the thing is, it wasn't just me. So our scene at that time, you know how exciting it was for you guys when jungle and drum and bass was kind of exploding for you guys here in the UK. It was the same feeling here in New Zealand, except it wasn't our music. So it was kind of exciting because we felt like we were discovering something really secret that none of the mainstream New Zealand music industry knew about. And, you know, we created our own scene, our own underground scene. We had our own fashion labels, our own magazines, we had our own radio shows. You know, I remember the One in the Jungle tapes getting sent over to New Zealand. There was someone here in the UK who was recording them, a New Zealander, recording the One in the Jungle tapes and sending them back to New Zealand. That shit would get copied so many times till the tape was like, whoa, you know.
Yeah.
And we were hearing, like, I can remember, Moose and the Navigator at the helm, mix them out to mess, have come to bring it right down, boom, do, with DJ Ron. And you know, like we would hear you guys on One in the Jungle, and then we started to hear like Brian G and Ronnie Size, and you know, it was just like this exciting explosion that was our thing, that we from the UK, you know, that was our thing. And so the more that we started to embrace and find out and love this drum and bass culture, the more the drum and bass raves started to become their own entity. So there was no longer this all genre rave. We still had these amazing all genre raves like Destination, which is shot where Lord of the Rings was filmed, all these rock formations, and they kind of like wedged the DJ booth in under a rock, and we're all like dancing on these like cliff tops.
Sounds
like
amazing.
insane locations, bro. Like there was Sign of the Bellbird, which was right up on the tops of the hills in Christchurch, looking out over the whole city. I remember my mate trying to climb over one of those you know, those fences with the barbed wire and like ripping his leg open, like trying to get into the rave, just shit like that. But drum and bass raves definitely became their own entity, and people would have their own house gigs and people would have their own trance gigs, and techno was doing its own thing. So we started to have this really insanely healthy electronic music culture, and we all supported each other. Like, it didn't matter that, because I love techno, like after drum and bass, techno is my favorite dance music, and I would love going to a techno night on a Sunday after being to a drum and bass night on a Saturday and supporting the promoter. And then they'd come along to one of our shows later on down the line when I was part of a promotions company. They'd come to our gigs, you know, so it was super supportive and super exciting.
In the early part of that, were you just a patron, or were you
Punter.
A punter? Yeah. You were just a punter.
Yeah. Only for about a year. I was only a punter for a year. But
so we're talking. So now in '97, we're talking.
So around '97, I start dating Joe Moses, aka Need for Mirrors.
Yeah, I know Joe.
Yeah. So back then, Moses.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I did not
know that. We were together for 2 years. We lived together.
Did not know that.
He was the first boyfriend I ever lived with. We got a little bit tired of the one promotions company based in Auckland dictating what was happening around the rest of the country in terms of who was coming over. So in the meantime, I'm still at drama school, and these auditions come up for a TV program called Showcase, which is like a TV program, like a talent show, basically. And my mum sends in a video recording, a VHS of me singing at the piano. She sends it in and she doesn't tell me. And I'm just starting to get my street cred. I'm cool. I found my
kind of can see where this is going.
My people. Do you know what I mean? I found my people in dance music. It's where I first felt like I really belonged. And then I get this phone call. I must have been home for the holidays, and I get this phone call when I'm in Taranaki on the farm, and it's like, "Hey Natalia, congratulations, you've made it onto Showcase." And I'm like, "What?" And Mum's like, "Oh my God." I'm like, "Nah, I'm not doing it." And Mum's like, "Yeah, you are." I'm like, "No, I'm not." She's like, "Yes, you are." I'm like, "No, I'm fucking not." We have this massive screaming match because I'm like, it's going to ruin my street cred if I go on this TV program. And my mum, bless her heart, she was like, "I've poured my whole life into seeing you get to this point, and all I want is for the world to see you, or New Zealand to see you." And I said, "I'll only do it if I sing my own songs."
Yeah.
And they were like, "Okay." So Moses, in the meantime, was like, "It's not very cool for you to be doing this."
So this is 97 then?
Yeah, I think 96. Maybe,
okay.
Yeah, around 96. And he's like, "It's not cool for you to do this TV program." And I was like, "Well, I've said I'll do it. I'm going to sing my own songs." And he was like, "Well, I still don't think it's really cool that you're doing it." And I was like, "Well, I'm going to do it." So I went on and I won the first heat,
right.
the first round. Thanks. And I won like a palm top computer. And Moses was like, "Great, we can sell it. Make money." And I was like, so I sold it and, you know, got like a couple of grand for it. And then you go into the next round and I had to write another song. So every 3 weeks I had to write a new song, whole new song. And they'd arrange this orchestral arrangement. So I went on the second round. I won that.
Wow.
And I won some cash money. And then, you know, I'm on the tally by this stage. And Joe's kind of thinking it's a bit cool by then. And he thought it was especially cool when he found out that first prize was a trip to London. Because he's like, "We can go raving."
Right, yeah.
We can go together and go raving. And I'm like, "Yeah, all right." So I entered it. I didn't win it. I got third. And I was beaten by someone who sang an R. Kelly song.
Okay, yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But whatever, you know. And I remember afterwards sitting down in the after drinks with everyone, and there was one of the judges was from a record label. And all the artists like had their the EPKs or the CVs in a brown envelope, and we're giving them to this guy from Polygram Records. And I didn't have anything with me.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know what Polygram Records was or whatever. You know, all I cared about was drum and bass.
Yeah.
And I remember he came and he sat down with me and he was talking to me about how I could be a pop artist. And he was like, "I thought you were the best on the show." And I said, "Well, if I was the best, why didn't I win?"
Yeah.
And he was like, "Well, you know, it's one of those shows. It's like, you know, you got to..." And I was like, "But I sang my own material." And he was like, "Yeah, but you know," and I was like, "Well, that's bullshit."
Yeah.
Like, if you think I'm going to just be a manufactured pop artist, he goes, He goes, I'm wasting my time talking to you, aren't I? You're really not interested in anything I have to say. And I was like, to be honest, bro, no.
Yeah.
I never told my parents about that because I know my mother would have killed me.
Right.
Basically, I was not interested in a major label.
Yeah.
I wanted to be in drum and bass, and I wanted to be an MC. And around about that time, I had started to get back into my lyric writing, my poetry writing, my rapping. And when I first heard drum and bass, and I first saw my first MC and heard the boys on the radio, I was like, I want to do that. I don't know if there's any girls doing it, but I want to do it. And I want to be the first person to do it in New Zealand, for sure.
You must have had a feeling that, well, you knew you were good anyway, but this is like now validation, like, you know, like that I'm good, and that I don't want to do any major stuff. Where do you go from there?
Well, I knew I didn't want to do any acting either because I was still at drama school. And I remember getting down on my knees and doing a little prayer and being like, dear God, if I win this, I'll take it as a sign that if I get somewhere, I'll take this as a sign that you want me to pursue music. If I don't, I'm going to take this as a sign that I should pursue theatre and acting. Thank God it was music because I was never a good actor.
Okay, yeah.
I don't think I was very good anyway. But the thing about the show is that third place was a trip to Hong Kong.
Okay.
And I remember going to the travel agents and there was this little travel agent that was in cahoots with the show that was helping arrange the flights and stuff. And I remember talking to them and being like, I don't want to go to Hong Kong, I want to go to London because I want to go to the birthplace of drum and bass.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, for the same price, if you add a little bit more money, we can get you the same package as the winner to the UK. And I was like, let's do that. So I remember skipping home. And
so there was already a space for two people.
What do you mean?
Like so basically the winning person.
The winner got two tickets to the UK.
2 tickets, yeah, that's the point I'm saying. Yeah.
And second place went to LA and third place got to go to Hong Kong.
But it was always 2 tickets.
Always 2 tickets.
So you brought Moses.
Well, I went home and I was living with Moses and Julie. Remember Julie from who I used to take to church?
Julie, Julie, yeah.
And Moses was like, oh my God, so we're going to go to London. And she was like, literally, I would have been going to London if you were not here. And I was like, yeah. And she was like, so you're going to take Moses? And I was like, yeah.
It's a conundrum.
He's my boyfriend, but also Moses would have broken up with me if I hadn't taken him. He's that kind of person. So I was like, he was like, yo, we're going to England. So then it suddenly became his trip.
And he had never been before.
Nah, I took him. He would never ever admit that. He would never say that.
But it's a fact.
He would never acknowledge it.
Yeah, but it's a fact.
It's a fact, Ron.
Yeah. You just told me it's a fact. It's not. It's nothing wrong with that.
No.
It's just that you both lived. I didn't know where even Moses came from until just now.
Well,
so the fact that you and him went out with each other.
He came from a town 5 hours south of Christchurch called Dunedin, from a little town called Port Chalmers. So he came from even further south. He was a real southern boy. But we met in Christchurch. We started dating, and just to flip forward again to that, what I was saying about how we were dissatisfied with the one dominant agency that was bringing over artists. We wanted to hear people like Brian G, Shay FX. We were massive fans of DJ Bailey's mixing. We had our own idea of who we wanted to see, So we were like, this trip to the UK, we sat down and we were like, this is the pilgrimage. It definitely became Joe's trip. He was like, we're going here. I want to go to No U-Tune Records. I want to go see Clayton at Renegade Hardware. I want to go and see Sarah at Unique Agency or whatever.
No, Groove Connection.
Groove Connection.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right. So I was like, just happy to go. Do you know what I mean? He was like, I want to get Dat's car at Music House. So it became, I was like, can we go to Paris for 2 days?
Yeah.
But as well as that, we went to Barumba. So amazing thing about Barumba, the night we went was the first night I heard Breakbeat Era.
Okay.
I see you, can you see I'm paper thin? I remember there was this beautiful black man next to me with short dreadlocks, dancing to that music and smiling at me and me smiling at him and me trying to dance like him and us having this dance off and the sweat pouring down my face and just being like, I need to live here. I need to experience this all the time.
You did not want to go back home.
No way, man.
Yeah.
And we went to Metalheads and we met Bailey. And
You went to where?
Metalheads.
Metalheads, right, okay.
Metalheads.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I wasn't sure what you meant. Go on, carry on.
Metalheads. And Moses being like, we're going to meet Bailey here. And this was when we were
quite
like...
interesting that you met Bailey there as a result of that, and them two went on to do Soul in Motion, which I don't think they do that together anymore.
He would never say that. He would never...
But it's the truth.
That.
It's the truth.
So...
It's nothing wrong, it's just the truth.
No, I know. It's so funny how people want to like whitewash things, you know? Anyway, we met Bailey. We'd been in contact with Bailey through early emails. No, I don't even know. The internet must have existed. So we got a hold of Bailey and we were meeting him there, and I remember we met him, and I just remember Michael smiling at me, and he had that gold tooth, and I was just like, he's gorgeous, you know, his beautiful big smile. And I was like, we have to book him. And Moses was like, he was really nice. So the whole thing was that Moses wanted to start an agency, and along with his friend James Harry, aka Pylons, another DJ who played more jungle and breakbeat, and then Joe played the real funky stuff, the full cycle and V recordings kind of things, good looking records, you know. And we kind of went on this pilgrimage with the intention to go to these raves and experience the culture, but also to make the connections. And one of the first connections was Bailey. And he was like, yes, I want to come to New Zealand. However, the very first person that our agency at the time bought out was Daz from Babylon Shall Fall.
Yeah, Daz texted me just the other day, actually. Yeah,
you know Daz? I love that guy. Oh my God. So he was actually the first dude we brought out. So
he was the first person you flew to New Zealand.
He was the first guy we brought out.
That's wild, man.
Because it was that jungle. We'd gone back and we were checking the jungle records. And Daz did Babylon Shall Fall and obviously Splash Juice recordings. And we were big fans.
Darren Ellis, his name.
Darren Ellis, exactly. Yes, I know that because I wrote the contract.
Yeah, and you would have booked his ticket.
And I didn't know how to write a contract, and I must have Googled it online or something, but I was like, I wrote the first contract for us. And we flew him out for 3 days. Can you imagine? He flew 24 hours to play a rave in the middle of nowhere. We took him to the Gathering, which was like our version of Glastonbury, but like no commercialism, no advertising, just the sick-ass rave up in the hills, like so cool, up in Nelson. Daz came to that. We put him up in a little caravan. We just gave him a bunch of weed, got him stoned for the whole 3 days so that he did jet lag, didn't set in. He played the sickest set just after New Year's was rung in. And it was so nerve-wracking for us because it was our first international, and the tent was empty because obviously everyone was outside under the stars, fireworks. It's summer's, Summer's Eve. And I ran in and I was like, "Don't worry, Daz, they'll come." And he goes, "I hope so, Tali, I hope so." I was like, "Don't you worry, they're going to be here in a minute." And he's like, "Oh, what do I do?" And I was like, "Just start." And so he just started, and within 5 minutes, the tent was rammed. And it was wicked, and it was a success. And so from there, we got our confidence.
I'm going to send him this little clip.
Oh, bless his heart,
I'm going to send him this little clip.
The other thing is him and Moses both loved graph.
Okay.
So we took him up to Wellington. He didn't even play a gig there. We just went up to Wellington, and him and Moses and a German tourist who had turned up on our door that summer, like, "Hello, I heard that a graffiti artist lives here."
No
and we
way,
were like,
really?
"Yeah." And he's like, "Oh, my name is Heinrich. I'm from Germany. I was told to come here." And he comes in. He's got this amazing book of graffiti. So him and Moses go bombing that night and do the most incredible piece together. And those two were just like that. Then Daz comes over. The three of them in Wellington, like just bonding over graph. But I'm just taking photos the whole time. Then they have this whole day of graffiti writing. And then on the way home, we come across some breakers on a little piece of vinyl, bopping.
Wow.
And I'd never actually seen any breakers on the street in New Zealand at that point. But Daz was like, "Oh yeah, I used to break back in the day." And they were like, "Oh yeah." First of all, they were like, "What accent is that?" Because I don't think they were used to seeing a black man with an English accent. They were like, "Whoa, where are you from?" And then Daz gets down on that piece of vinyl and he does some crazy legs and a backspin. Nearly puts his hip out, bless him. He gets up, he's like, yeah. And they're like, "Woo, woo." And as he walks away, he's like, "I'm going to pay for that." So he was our guinea pig. But he said to us, you can't fly a person out for 3 days for that far. He was like, the flight's horrendous, it's too far. You've got to get people out for longer. So that was our first kind of like experience of what not to do. So the next person was Bailey, and Bailey came out, and you know, we were so nervous. I remember the design that went into that poster, James, me, Harry, and Moses arguing over the design. We had Danby Motive helping us with the design. It was meetings until late. I remember the phone ringing at 2 in the morning and Moses being like, don't answer it, I have to get it. And then him being like, hello, Joe, Moses speaking, you know, like talking to Bailey's agent. Finally, it all worked out. He came over. We were so nervous. It was at the ministry. The queue was down the block and around the corner, and it sold out. And Bailey came in and he just played a classic Bailey set, long, smooth, rolling mixes. Now, he had Flux with him. Yeah. So he had his MC, and it was epic. And we were just like, we've done it. We've put on the first ever Christchurch rave with an international artist, booked and paid for by local promoters.
Well done, congratulations.
Yeah. And then from there, it just, the boys called themselves Scientific. That was the name of the promotions company. And then from there, our next artist was Brian G. We had Shy FX. And it just kind of like took off from there.
I'm trying to get this timeline, because now, if you'd come over to England, you'd seen this life in England, you'd made some connects, you've gone back now as promoters.
We're talking 98, 99 now.
Where does MC Tali kick into this?
So the whole time that Scientific is, I forgot about me for a sec. Forgot that I did that. For the whole time that's happening, I, you know, like when I first saw Flux, actually no, it was when I saw SS and, oh my guy, what is his name? Justice.
Okay.
SS and Justice came out. And I mean, could you have met two lovelier people than SS and Justice? And I remember just seeing the vibe and meeting them and just being like, I want to do what he's doing. And then Andy came out with GQ.
Yeah.
I was like, there was no woman. So there was one other guy, Moses' friend, Green.
And we're up to
97, 98?
Yeah, so you're up to 98 by
98
now, right?
by now,
Yeah.
So there's one other person who MCs, and that's Green. But he was not as passionate about it as me, and so he didn't really put as much thought into it. Whereas I was really studying that shit like I was going for a degree in it. I read Knowledge magazine cover to cover. I was like, I need to know everything, because I remember Moses saying to me, it's not enough to be good, you're going to have to be great, because no one's going to take you seriously as a woman, especially a woman that looks like you, you know. So
What do you mean by looks like you?
like a little bunny, raven girl, the white girl, you know, like boop, 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 with my little dress the way I am now.
Yeah.
You know, so I was like, cargo pants, cap, you know, a little bit more staunch, you know.
Back on the farm again.
Yeah. Minus the gumboots.
Yeah.
You know, just a little bit more. I just refined my look a little bit more, my brand, I guess, and just studied the MCs that I wanted to. But the thing is that because I was listening to like G, Justice, Moose, Nevi, all these people, like I thought I needed to sound like a 30-something black man from London. And so in a way though, to begin with, it was like, I was trying to be so much like my idols.
Yeah.
And obviously it takes a while to find your sound, right? It's the same with anything. But I eventually started to find my sound. But what I do think those guys, their influence really stuck with me was the baritone, the supported voice, the yes, 1, 2, the Tali, the back of the throat, the strength, the voice that can cut through, as opposed to, I think, a lot of other MCs, maybe female MCs whose voices were higher. I mean, I've always had a low voice, but listening to those dudes, like, I think that essence rubbed off on me.
Because you were practicing it.
All the time.
Yeah, you're practicing it. You're going right. Okay, so these are the MCs. In fact, you're probably looking at it from a different perspective. Like like if you had lived here, it's quite likely that because you would have had it right from the beginning and whatever.
Right in my face.
You would have just been a girl, a female MC.
Yeah.
But being over there, you're like, oh, I've got to copy Do you know what I mean? So then I suppose this is where now your vocal training and your acting and being at that school came
100%.
in, because they're teaching you
Stage presence.
Exactly, stage presence. There was something else you said, accents.
Yeah.
You know, you said accents earlier, and they are projecting sort of like an accent as well.
Yeah.
So
it's that kind of jock voice that they call it in radio. You know what you were doing before?
Yeah, yeah.
Hi, yes, it's DJ Ron.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
that
Hi,
jock
it's
voice.
DJ Ron.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
if you think about it, that is the same essence that you layer onto your voice when you become an MC. And I knew as well that in order for my voice to cut through, that I had to have that supported deep, like, yes, Tali on the mic. You know, it's got to be like in the back of the throat. It's also a really healthy way to support your voice. It's like, I could MC for 4 hours straight. So anyway, I'm doing this, I'm practicing, and I do my first ever show. So Moses is like, you're not doing your first show in Christchurch, because if you're shit, you're going to look terrible. So we're going to do it down in Dunedin, where he used to live. So he puts on this night down there at Bath Street, another legendary club. And first of all, I went down there for a little trip to visit his parents, and we went to the club, and his mate DJ Shan was spinning hip hop, and Shan asked me to get on the mic and sing, and I did a little bit of rapping, and the place went mental. And Shan was like, yo, you've got a wicked flow. And then I went to a cypher down at one of the local open mic nights in Christchurch. Didn't tell Moses I was doing it. So I wanted to be an MC before he knew. I didn't really want to tell him because I thought he'd disapprove. And I went down to the liquor lounge and stood in the cypher circle, and the mic came around to me, and I remember grabbing it, and I'd pre-rehearsed some rhymes. I'd written something and I delivered them, and again the place went mental. It got back to Moses, and that's when he was like, look, do you really want to do this for real? And I was like, I do, but I need you to support me if I'm going to do it. And he was like, okay, I will support you, but you're going to have to be good at it. So I practiced, and I played that gig in Dunedin, and then I did another smaller gig in Christchurch, and then a slightly bigger gig. And then I guess the breaking point was Bailey came back, and unfortunately Flux got stopped in Australia and couldn't come into New Zealand for visa issues. And so on the day Bailey arrives, Moses is like, can you imagine the veins popping out of his head? We've got no MC.
Yeah.
And he was like, you're going to have to do it. And I was like, this is my moment, you know? And I was like, really? And he was like, yeah, you're going to have to do it. So I was like, okay. So we go up to the hotel, and Bailey's like, okay, look, we'll have some code words. If I do this, it means a vocal's coming. If I do this, it means be quiet. If I do this, it means I'm going to rewind it. Don't forget to shout out the producer. And of course, being the nerd I was, I knew a lot of the tracks that Bailey played. So yeah, I emceed for him for 4 hours, and he was like, you know what, Tali? He's like, it's when you do the singing and the emceeing. There's a couple of girls MCs in England, but there's no one singing and rapping who's like you. If you really want to do this, that's going to be your superpower.
You know, one thing about this podcast, right? I never on this podcast speak about my guests and their partners.
Right.
We never speak about that. In a way, it's deliberate, because, you know, there's the length of time, and it's like this and that and this time that's gone on. But since I've sat here with you, and I first hear about Moses, and I see how you are when you speak about it. But then just now when you said, you know, like about you, what, you know, like you thought he would disapprove, and so you didn't want to do it without his approval. He then said, no, if you want to do this thing, I'll support you. It sounds to me that you both had a very close relationship at the very start of your career.
Yeah.
And
we were together at the beginning of our careers.
Yeah, and
we had a tumultuous relationship.
I just
though.
get a sense that it was, and I was about to say that. Yeah.
Because you know what? We both wanted it. We both wanted to be successful. And the thing with Joe, I mean, he would probably hate me talking about him in this podcast, but I would not exist. MC Tali would not exist without him in my life. So I'm not going to whitewash him out of my existence and pretend he did not exist. But we did have this tempestuous relationship because we were both ambitious and we both wanted the other to do well. but not at the expense of the other. Well, I mean, I was definitely...
I mean, it's very honest
You know.
to speak about that, and like you say, you know, he may well not want it, but this is an open podcast. This is like with people speaking about their
and
lives.
it's life, and as you say, it's
People
fact.
speaking about his life. His wife. He's married off with his own family. But why I think
Already
this.
together for 2 years, Jesus.
Yeah. Well, no. But then going back again to what I said earlier, you know, now we go like, I ain't seen him for 5 years. How you doing, mate? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But back then, 2 years was a long time.
A long time, especially for like a 22-year-old.
Yeah. 2 years was a long time, and especially 2 years of gargantuan change.
Oh my God, yeah.
You know, like
Yeah,
this is a huge a moment in your career, from nothing to winning that thing.
Yeah, going
to then
England.
going to England,
Yeah.
agency, bringing people over, the first people to do it. That's not a joke.
I think, like you say, it's fact. It's important. It's shaped my future. The thing is that it was very tumultuous. We fought a lot. There were things like, you know, I feel like there were times when I downplayed myself or suppressed myself in order to allow him what he wanted to go. But the more that I grew in confidence and the more that I knew that I was good, it's like, who's created a monster? You know, but it was like, I was like, kind of like, you know what I mean?
What have I done?
Who is she? What is this? MC Tali? What the hell? Do you know what I mean? Like, the more I was like, actually, no, I'm going to put my foot down and I'm going to say, this is what I want. And that is going to create friction. You know, and I did a lot for him and James. I wrote all of the blurbs for the poster, for the flyers. I wrote the contracts. And then obviously helping run the gigs. But that can really start to rub in our relationship. And it actually got to the point where it was more like a working relationship than we were boyfriend and girlfriend. And that's when we decided to split up. It was pretty mutual. Like, we were just fighting more than we were getting on. But we both believed in the business and we believed in drum and bass more than we believed in our relationship. So we were like, we'll keep working together. And so we did for a little bit because, you know, we just wanted this thing to work and we really believed in what we were doing. And I really believed in what he was doing, you know, like, it was pretty amazing.
It's a lovely story. I think that's a really lovely story.
But once we broke up, I was kind of like, I don't want to be here anymore. And I have ambitions. And if
when you say be here anymore, you were...
in New Zealand,
Okay,
in Christchurch.
Yeah.
And I was sort of like, I had ambitions. I was like, I want to go to England. Because MCs are not big here. Drum and bass is like, I could see what was happening with drum and bass in the UK, and I was like, I need to be a part of that. If I really want to do this, I need to be there. So I first of all went to Melbourne. I went there for a holiday and checked out the drum and bass scene. And some of the promoters knew who I was because we had worked with Aussie promoters as well. We'd brought over a couple of Australian acts, and Moses and I had gone and played in Aussie together. We'd done Perth and Melbourne together. So when I went over there, I got to get on the mic at a couple of nights in Melbourne, and then I came home and was like, I want to move there, with the intention that I was saving my money to go to the UK, with the intention that I was going to find where Ronnie Size lived, because he was my hero at that time, and like, you know, hello.
Do what a German guy did.
Pretty much. Because I'm like, well, it worked there, you know, but or go to a rave or find him somehow. I was like, I'm going to find them. But fate brought them to me. So I was waitressing in this Italian cafe. I saw a poster for Ronnie Size Represent, supported by the Black Eyed Peas.
Where was this, over here or in...
Melbourne.
In Melbourne, right.
Yeah. So now we're talking 2000.
Wow, do you know what? I didn't know it was that late.
Yeah, 2000.
Yeah, I didn't know it was that late.
So so Moses and I split up in 2000, and I moved to Melbourne then, and then Full Cycle, Represent came to town. And by that stage, like, Dynamite was my favourite MC, New Forms was my favourite album, Honolulu was my favourite singer, you know, like...
You were like full cycled
I
out.
loved it. But what's interesting is that I actually was talking about this on the drive up today from Hastings with my friend. I actually was discovered first by Bookham and Conrad.
Okay.
So they came to play a show in Melbourne and I was playing support for them, and they saw me and we were backstage afterwards having drinks, and they were like trying to convince me that I should be a part of Good Looking Records.
Oh, wow.
And I remember saying, I love what you do and I love Good Looking Records, but my dream is really to be on Full Cycle. And I remember Conrad being like, well, if that's your dream, that's your dream. You know, like he was like, I mean, Ronnie Size is Ronnie Size. What can I say? He was like, but we think you're really great and we think that you could do really well in the UK. So Conrad actually saying that to me was a real confidence boost because I loved him and I loved what Bookham did.
Yeah. It's quite an interesting story. I mean, we know there's still more to go, obviously, but to know that you were on a farm, a dairy...
It still blows your mind, doesn't it?
Bro, let me say something. You were on this dairy farm, you know, right? This is not like, oh, I lived in Hackney and what it was, this, that and the other, or I lived down there and then this happened and that happened. You were a million miles away from this thing that you knew you always wanted to be when you were at the dairy farm. And I love stories like that.
I mean, I knew I wanted to be a performer, maybe not a drum and bass MC, but
No, but you didn't. Obviously, at that time, it didn't even exist.
No.
But this was what it was. You wanted to perform on the biggest stages in front of all of these people, and then you were like, and then I fell in love with these people.
Yeah.
And then I fell in love with this music, then these people, and now here I am with these people. It's like the story of manifestation personified in your story. Do you get what I mean? I
for
love
sure.
things like that. I really do like.
I mean,
things like
I
that.
played support for Ed Rush as well, and I got to meet him, and he was so lovely. And you know, and back in the day as well, back in Christchurch, I met Chemistry and Storm. They came and played, and I was still a punter at that point. But I remember they went to the bathroom, and me and my girlfriends were like, "They're in the toilets, quick!" We like run to the toilets. We're like, "Hi!" Like surrounding them and giving them presents, bracelets and shit we'd made and stuff. And I remember saying, I want to be just like you. And Storm was like, do you want to be a DJ? And I went, oh, I don't know if I want to be a DJ, but maybe an MC. And I remember Chemistry being like, well, you do you, girl. And her voice, like her soft voice, like, if you do you. And I was maybe like, they told me you do you.
Do you know what? I can't remember Chemistry's voice. Do you know that?
That's all I remember is her and Storm both had deep voices.
Yeah, I don't remember her voice. I know she was always very softly spoken.
She was softly spoken and Storm was deep.
Yeah, raspy kind of.
Yeah.
Raspy
Then
voice.
obviously Ronnie Size Represent came to town. I got a ticket. I waited for the Black Eyed Peas to finish performing. I pushed my way to the front. I left all my friends at the back. I didn't give a shit. I was like, I need to be in the front. They came on. I just remember my heart pounding. Just so excited. I was screaming at the top of my lungs, and they're doing that thing where they're around the computers with the anoraks on, the beginning of Railing or whatever it is. And then Dynamite bounding on stage, and I'm just losing my shit. And Cy John's on the double bass, and Annalise singing, and I remember, who told you you could do, and Dynamite comes up and he's singing it to me and holding my hand, and I'm just like, ah! And then afterwards, there was sort of an after party. The music was still playing downstairs, and then there's an upstairs with glass windows looking down onto the floor and a DJ booth. And there was rumours that, Diane Crust were going to continue playing, and so everyone was still hanging around. And I was walking out the door, and the promoter saw me, and he knew me. I was like, oh my God, the show was amazing, and he's like, oh, do you want to come to the after party upstairs? Gave me a wristband. And then the doors opened, and it's like that. Here it comes. Everyone's like, whoa, 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 whoa. You turn, and they walk in. It's like the cast of The Matrix, Ron with his threads down and his leather jacket and sunglasses, and they all come in like, whoa. And
in slow motion.
Yeah, and I'm just the wind and through my hair.
The wind
and I'm like,
blowing through the hair.
And I'm like, holy shit, they're here.
That's
and then
funny.
Crust and Di go past me, and they go into the DJ booth with Dynamite, and they start performing, and Ronnie's in the corner, and he's surrounded by people, and my mate's like, go talk to him, there he is. And I'm like, nah, just real shy. And he's like, do it. This is your hero. So I went over and I was like, Ronnie, like to get his attention, and he looks at me, and I'm like, oh, I'm a... Man, I mean, I look back at myself and I'm kind of I cringe because I was like, I'm a drum and bass MC. I'm Australia's only drum and bass MC, like, real loud. But it worked. He's like, you're an MC. I was like, yeah. And he's like, come here. So I was like, excuse me, push my way past everybody. And he's like, I want you to MC for me in my ear right now. And I was like, what?
Boy, I tell you what, that is remarkable, because most people are like, I do not want to hear your lyrics now, bruv. Do you know what I mean? So carry on.
But he said, well, I did not do it like that. For starters.
I did not do it like that.
I did not sound like that. So I dropped some lyrics, some pre-rehearsed lyrics that I had, but then I sang for him so that he could hear that I could sing. And he was like, no way. I remember him like turning the way that Ronnie D. No way. He was like, you are wicked. He was like, take my hand. And I was like, where are we going? He's like, just take my hand. I'm like, I'm taking Ronnie Sizer's hand. And he leads me into the DJ booth, opens the door, and he's like, Dynamite, give her the mic. He's kind of laughing, like he's playing a joke on them. Dynamite's like, looks down at me and he's like, what, her? Ronnie's like, trust me, give her the mic. So Dynamite's like, and gives me the mic, and I wait, I wait 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then I go. And I can remember Di and Crust turning around. I can vividly picture the smiles on their faces, Crust's eyes, like, who the hell is this? Dinah's got his champagne. He's like, bop, 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 banging it against the side of the DJ booth. And then afterwards, we all go to this club, and I remember we walk in, and there's like a velvet rope, and we go into this back room, and there's this rider and everything, and I'm like, this is the shit.
I've arrived.
Yeah, like, what the hell? I want to be here forever. And that's when the questions started, like, who are you? Where are you from? What do you do? And all that studying I'd ever done, all those knowledge magazines I'd read from cover to cover, that's when that came in handy, because I could spiel all this knowledge off to them and show them that I was really dedicated and really passionate. Like, I knew my shit, and I wasn't just some flash in the pan little wannabe. Ronnie was like, what's your goal? And I said, my goal is I want to work with you. And he was like, well, you found me. Here's my email, here's my number. Hit me up when you come to London.
Yeah. When we started here earlier off camera, I was saying, I hadn't seen you for about 20 years. Actually, I must have seen you within 20 years, because that was only 23 years ago, just about 20 odd years ago, because that's 2000, right?
Yeah.
Am I right? Round about that time, 98-ish?
Yeah, we saw each other at a festival, I was telling you about.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we must have seen each other before then.
I only met you like 2 or 3 times, though.
We've seen each other loads of times, but we've not...
I'm always like, it's DJ Ron!
Yeah, but we've not...
He wrote Distance, my favourite song.
But we've not... focused. But we've not had a conversation.
No.
That's what it is. We've seen each other. I've seen you loads of times, but we've not had a conversation as such. But what a start, what a leg up. It doesn't get much better than that, to be a singing MC who then gets the opportunity to sing and MC at Ronnie Size VIP party.
I never told you this, but when I was back in Christchurch, the whole time we were doing scientific, I finished drama school. I went back to university, did music for my 3rd year, got all A's. I was like, why did I not do music? But got my degree. And then when I told my parents I wanted to move to the UK, my mum and dad begged me to go to teachers college for a year and get my teaching diploma. So in case I ran out of MC work in the UK, I'd have something to fall back on. So I also got my teaching diploma as well. So I'm a qualified teacher and have a Bachelor of Arts, and I've got a diploma in performing arts, but the only thing I cared about was being an MC.
Your parents were right, like it's... I'm not sure whether you ever had to use it.
Oh yeah, I've used it loads, and I use it to this day. I'm an in-school music mentor for the New Zealand Music Commission.
There you go. So you land in the UK, you're here now, and you're like, it's not your first rodeo, you've been here before. Yeah. So the surprise isn't so much, but I'd imagine the fact that you're saying that you're going to live here for a while has a bearing on you, like in terms of like, right, this isn't like the last time. I'm not with Moses. I'm like,
I'm
I'm
independent.
an independent woman. Okay, so what happens? Where do we go from there?
So I didn't contact Ronnie for 3 months because I was really scared that maybe they'd changed their mind. But what had happened was that I'd read a few magazine articles, interviews with them from their time in New Zealand and Australia, and they mentioned me in a couple of magazines when they were asked if they'd found any talent. They said, we met this little girl from New Zealand and we're hoping we see her again. And I was kind of like, it's there in black and white. They do want to see me again. I need to get over myself. And so I contacted Ronnie finally, and he was like, come to our show at the Hammersmith Apollo. We rocked up. We rocked up really late because...
Who's we?
Me and Missy, my best friend, who came with me from Australia to England. She supported me wholeheartedly. And we rocked up really late because we thought that, you know, like raves start really late, but it was a concert. So we got there for like the last 4 songs.
Okay.
And the boys spotted me in the crowd. And then afterwards, I remember Suv was like, come back. And we went backstage and they were like, we're having an after party on the tour bus for an hour and then we've got to go because we're off on tour. Do you want to come on the bus? And we were like, should we? And we were like, oh, and then we saw all these other people getting on there and we were like, okay, it is a party. It's not something dodgy. So we, you know, because we don't know who these dudes are really. So we get
on a bus and it's like driving out of London.
Like, we're taking you to Scotland. So we get on the bus and we're all drinking and having a good time. And then Ronnie comes into the lounge area of the bus and he's like, everybody shush. And he's like, Tali's going to MC for us. I'm like, what? He's like, Di, drop a beat. So Di starts beatboxing a drum and bass beat. And I'm like, okay, here we go. I'm the performing monkey.
Yeah.
So away I go. I start emceeing and the whole bus just explodes. And everyone's like, Ronnie, man, you got to sign her. You know, like just, it was amazing. And I remember Ronnie just gave me a big hug and he's like, you know, you need to come to Bristol. So what happened was Suv actually got in touch with me first and was like, oh, I'm working on this project called Real Time. I need a singer. He sent me some demos. I sent him back some recordings and he invited me to Bristol. So I actually started working with Suv first, but I thought that Ronnie knew that I was working with Suv. I thought everybody was in the understanding, but no, it was a secret. Like Suv hadn't told them. So he had kind of reached out to me without telling them.
A little sly move.
Yeah, and it was kind of uncomfortable for me because I didn't realise, but they weren't all as best buds as I thought. So it was kind of a little bit awkward, but I had some good times with Suv and I made some good music with him. But, you know, I wanted to work with Ronnie and Crust, that was my thing. And then I went in the studio with Di and did something with him and then with Crust. And then finally, Ronnie called me and he was like, I've just been waiting to see what the other guys said about you and if you're a professional. And he goes, and it's nothing but good news or something like that. And so I remember going up to his house in St Andrews, the big house on the hill, and we sat down and I'd bought some songbooks with me and he pulls out this beat and starts playing it to me and he's like, have you got anything that would go over this? And it's just this horn, and these drums, and I'm like opening my book and I'm looking at my lyrics and I just started taking some bits from At Night I'm Kept Awake by Me, thinking of lyrics constantly, something, and then I'm listening to my favourite tune, and he was like, Ronnie was like, sitting there, this look on his face, and then he's like, and a hook, and I was like, I've got a lyric on my lip, and once it starts, it just won't quit, and he was like, get in the booth. And I'm like, hang on, and with my pen, and I'm like, you know, rewriting stuff real quickly, and I get in there, and the recording you hear on the record is the first take I did.
Oh, amazing.
So Ronnie says.
Yeah. So he says, yeah?
So yeah. And then from there, I started traveling back and forth to Bristol more often. And then it got to a point where Ronnie just said, look, I've got 3 questions to ask you. 1, will you move to Bristol? 2, do you want to sign to Full Cycle Records? And 3, can we make a Tali record? Not a Ronnie record, not a Crust record, not a Di record, but a Tali record. And you'll be the first lady ever on Full Cycle to release a record. And I was like, yes, and yes. Yes to the dress.
Yeah.
And then I moved to Bristol, and within a few months we were touring America and playing out that material, testing out that material. Testing out Lyric on My Lip in front of Goldie in Miami, and yeah, just like seeing what the crowd reaction would be like and what people thought of me, and it was for the most part really positive, yeah, and exciting.
Why'd you say for the most part?
Oh, because for the other part it was horrendous and awful, and I got loads of harassment and bullied and awful things said
Like,
about
who
me.
is she?
Who is she? Who does she think she is? For the most part, the majority of DJs that I encountered were really nice to me and respectful to me. And I guess because I was rolling with Full Cycle, they were like, well, she must have something going on.
Yeah, that was the general...
Yeah,
I thought that was
consensus. Yeah, but I know that there were definitely some people who were like, who is she? Who does she think she is?
Were they MCs?
There were
A mixture of
okay. DJs and MCs. Like, what did she do to get there? Did she have a magic vagina?
Did you have a magic vagina? No, not really. I'm joking.
Alakazam. No, but you know what I mean.
And as if by magic, here I have an album.
Yeah, out of my vagina. But you know what I mean. It's like just so dumb. And there were people who were jealous and resentful of the fact that maybe they'd been doing it longer and hadn't achieved the same amount of recognition, and therefore I can understand that to them this, you know, little immigrant coming over and like taking all their jobs. But yeah, I can imagine it was difficult for people, but if those people had actually taken a minute to get to know me and realised that, you know, I was just as dumbfounded by it as they were, and that I'm actually a nice person and not a threat to them, but could actually be their friend and colleague, then they might not have had those opinions.
It was that bad?
Yeah.
And really? That's
there was also people who were trying to like stir stuff, you know, like, I'll tell you a story. So, you know Lady MC, Kerry, right? Yeah. So she's a really good friend of mine, and I freaking love that girl, and we get on incredibly well. But she did not like me when I first started out because the Full Cycle gang called me the First Lady. Yeah. First Lady of Full Cycle, right? And I was the First Lady to do what I was doing in drum and bass, you know, that's not a lie either. I weren't trying to say that I was the first lady ever to do anything. It was just a nickname, like the Don Ron or, you know, King Crust or whatever. I don't know.
No, but I am the Don.
You are the Don Ron.
There's a very, very big difference. No, really, I'm kidding.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean? It was just a nickname.
Yeah.
But I remember that some people took offense to that, and lady said to me, you know, I took offense that you called yourself that, and it kind of irked her. But there were people behind her, unsavory voices that were stirring the pot and being like, you should say something, you should do something about it, you should do a diss record, you should say something. And Kerry's not really like that, but back then she would say that she was a different person, and she did have a chip on her shoulder, and she's had a very rough start in life, and, you know, she's been through a lot. And if you've got voices in your ear saying, you need to say something and stop that girl and da-da-da-da-da, that can really start to pollute you, you know. And so Kerry made a diss record, a diss song, and I never heard it because my agent, Tanya, bless her heart, she was like, don't listen to that shit. We rise above that. We're not like that, you know, kind of thing. Tanya was like, oh, they want to know if you've got a comment, if you want to comment on it. And I was like, I have absolutely nothing to say. I don't know what I've done to deserve that. Like, I'm just out here trying to do the best like everybody else, you know, like I'm a good person, you know, like it really hurt me. But at the same time, I was like, I'm just going to rise above it. And then it was years later that Kerry realised that we actually had loads of friends in common. And, you know, we were just at hospitality on the beach together recently, having a D&M on the beach at some ungodly hour. and her saying to me, I always knew that we would get on. I always knew there would be a connection between us. But the thing is that there were other people that tried to create division, that wanted us to not get on because it was part of like not letting women into the scene. If we can divide them and make them hate each other and make them think these things about each other, it means that we don't have to worry about them. You know, it's the classic patriarchal system at play here, and we are actually much better than that and more gracious than that, and realize over time that actually we get on incredibly well. And once we were given an opportunity to create a bridge, because the minute she said to me, she sent me a message and said, I'm so sorry for the way I spoke to you. I never should have done that. The minute she said that, I was like, water under the bridge, we're mates, all good. I just want to get along with people, do you know what I mean? And I see that as a classic example of people back in the day having an opinion about me, but rather than taking the time to get to know me, just having that opinion of me and running with it, regardless.
Yeah, I think those days were very, very protective days of people.
A lot of
back in those
gatekeeping
days.
going
Yeah,
on,
yeah,
you know,
a
for
lot.
sure.
For a number of people, for everybody, there was, if anybody came up with something that was similar or record deals or this or that and this, there was all this, it was all new. And so as a result of that, there was a lot of kind of, you know, those whispers, as you call them, and whatever. But you know what? We've all grown, and here we are. You know.
Exactly. And the thing is that what I learned from that, particularly the fact that when I started out and there were no women in the industry there to give me advice, lend me a hand, give me a hug, show me the way. It wasn't until I sort of met Jenna G and Deism and was like, oh, these chicks are awesome. And they were like, oh, you're really cool. And we actually started to get on, and, well, not that we'd never got on, but we got on, and we sort of proved that there were women in the industry that could, like, you know, stand side by side. And, you know, DJ Daisy came on tour with me, and I had 2 backing singers in my band, and we were ever so slowly trying to break down those glass ceilings. And I always said, whenever somebody new was coming through, I want to be what I didn't have. And so, like, I remember when Rhea first came through with her song Open Page with Lensman, I remember reaching out to her and being like, I think you're amazing, your voice is incredible. If there's anything you need, you know, because I wanted her to feel like she had someone she could connect with.
That's really nice. That's a nice thing to do.
And that's what I have tried to pride myself on doing. I've done it with Colette Warren. I've done it with numerous women in the industry, right up into MC Wiser, who's just come through. I've made a connection with her because I think she's badass. And the more we are unified, the stronger our scene can be, right? Especially right now when, you know, the scene is very commercial and it has looked the same way for a few years now, and we're all getting a bit sick of that. And I think the more that we can create unification and diversification, the better and healthier it is for drum and bass.
I agree. Yeah. I agree.
Because there was definitely moments where I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And even the Full Cycle guys were like, we don't know what the fuck we're doing with this girl. Like, you know, like, this is new to us. And so we were all navigating these waters. And, you know, at times, even though I was rolling with a crew, it was still really lonely because I was one of them, but I was still a woman.
Yeah. You're still a
New
woman.
Zealand.
They are all friends.
Yeah.
No one could have actually really gone through lived your experience, and probably nobody will for a minute because, for starters, not a lot of people are going on tour in that way anymore.
The world's much more open now as well.
Yeah,
you know.
So obviously you went on to create some seminal records with Full Cycle, and they had an incredible period of progression, I'd say, you know what I mean, as an act that were found like in the mid-90s to then go on to win these various awards, and they were respected both in the underground and in the commercial scene, you know what I mean? So well done for you being a part of that process, you know?
I mean, yeah, I look back at it now and there's definitely pinch myself moments, but to be able to share those moments and, you know, like, I'm still really good friends with Ronnie and I'm still really good friends with Dynamite. Crust and Di I don't really see so much before. Sub I fell out with years ago, but just bully boy tactics kind of stuff that I weren't gonna stand for.
You're talking about Sub here.
Yeah, just around publishing, around writing credits, just trying to, you know, if we're going to really be real here, just like trying to say that I didn't write Do You Remember Me, which is a song I wrote about the crush that I had on Di at the time, and I changed the words from blue eyes to green eyes so that he wouldn't know, and I scat on the record, and then Sub tried to say, oh no, well, you only get 25% of that record. I'm like, no bro, but I ended up backing down and just saying, okay, you have it, because karma will be your friend in this situation, and I'm going to be the better person because also it's giving me an anxiety attack.
You know, I really love how you are so open, you know that? I really love that.
Oh, thanks.
No, do you know something? It's refreshing because a lot of people, there's a lot of things that happen in this scene that are personal, that involve somebody else and this, that and the other. And they'd be like, oh, I don't want to say, or I don't want to be, and I don't want to this, that and the other. But it's the truth.
But also...
One day they'll interview me and
I'll interview you, babes.
yeah, one day they'll interview me. Boy, let me tell you something, bruv.
It'll all come out.
Right?
The thing is, I don't see it as being personal. I don't see it. There's things
No,
about
it's not personal.
me.
This is where I'm interviewing
This is
you.
business.
Actually, I'm not interviewing you. I'm having a conversation with you,
Yeah.
and you are telling me parts of the conversation that is a part of your life, and it involves other people.
But it's business. It's facts. It's facts about the business. It's not personal. It's not like there's things about me that people will never know, but things like that are just factual to me. That's something to do with publishing and music, and it wasn't right what happened to me. And I'm not going to not say about it because we fell out over it. And we fell out because someone was trying to take advantage of me. And that's not right.
Yeah. Well said, Tali.
Thanks.
No, I'm dead serious.
I mean,
as well.
it upset me for years.
Well said. Do you know what I mean? And so be it. So you actually have some years with Full Cycle. Me have taken a hiatus from the scene, and by the time I came back, it was all sort of like, this, that. It disbanded to some degree.
Yeah, I don't even really know what happened there, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I just remember, like, this heaps of tension between them, and there was always, you know, like, me trying to understand and them being like, don't worry about it, don't worry. I was just, this happened, and, you know, they're like brothers. It's like family,
Yeah,
really.
it's like
and I
brothers.
just remember
it's
one
a good
day...
way. Yeah, sibling rivalry in a way,
Sibling rivalry and, like, you know, young guys trying to deal with, like, lots of fame and money, and I understand that as well to an extent because it's really overwhelming. And I just remember one day Ronnie just being like, we got off the tour bus and he's like, you're not going to see me for a while now. I'm going into my hibernation mode. So you're probably not going to see me now for a few months. And I was like, well, what do I do? And he was like, well, whatever you want. And I said, but what is that? And he goes, well, you can go and work with whoever you want. And I was like, well, who? And he goes, whoever you want. And I was like, okay. And then they all went off and did the sort of separate things. And I was like, I felt like this boat that had been tethered to the shore that had all of a sudden just been cut loose, and I was floating further and further away from the shore, and I was like, and I've like got no oars, and I'm trying to use my hands, and I'm like, you know, and I'm just further and further away from them, and not even knowing why, and suddenly just feeling really like abandoned. And
it's a good analogy, actually.
To no fault of theirs, because they were all going through whatever they were going through, but just felt like, who do I work with now? What do I do? I mean, as it turns out, I moved to London. I started working with this hip hop producer. I fell in love with him. I was with him for a couple of years. I made some music with Black Twang and Skinny Man, and, you know, was hanging out in the UK hip hop scene, which was kind of cool. But I left drum and bass mainly because I'd broken up with my boyfriend Clips, who I was with for 2 years. Clips.
Hugh.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah, we were at the festival together when I was telling you about. That guy is one of the most beautiful human beings in the world.
He's an amazing soul.
And an incredible
We're working
talent.
We've been working on a project for the last couple of years, he and I, and
we don't really speak anymore.
And
but
I got to realise how such a gentle person he is.
He's so
but he can while out. Trust me.
Yeah, totally.
He can while out. You know what I mean?
He can totally while out.
But generally, his general persona
is really sweet.
Is very, very sweet and very, very caring and very, very. He's a lovely man. But I did not know you and him went out with each other.
Oh yeah. We again started our careers at the same time. I just got signed to Full Cycle. He was on GQ's label.
That's right. That's where he started. Yeah, that's where he started.
And then he was living in Bristol, and I was in London. And I was coming down to play Full Cycle gigs, and we met there. And then I moved to Bristol, and then it all kind of kicked off between us. But we tried to keep it secret for a bit because he was trying to get signed to Full Cycle, and we didn't want anything to influence or jeopardize it. But then it became very clear. Ronnie was like, he'd signed me, and then he signed Hugh, and we were together. Yeah, and we were together for like 2 years. And like I said, I ain't got a bad word to say about the guy. He was amazing. But we broke up because we were ships in the night. We never saw each other. Like, we were constantly touring. He was making living drums. I was touring Lyric on My Lip. Like, it was just hectic. But oh, God, he was just such a beautiful person, but...
Yeah, a really good soul.
Rubbish boyfriend, because he was never there.
I've got a lot of time for him, man. Got a lot of time for him. He's a hard worker. Do you know what I mean? He's a
He's
hard
always
worker.
been a hard worker though,
Yeah,
Ron.
he's
He
a
used
hard
to like
worker.
fall asleep on the studio floor
Hard
until like
worker, man. He's a
6 in
grafter.
the morning.
He's very understanding as well.
You can't. Anyway, we
Yeah.
could gush about him all the
All right then, Hugh. You got your flowers, bruv. All right then.
I mean, I haven't seen him or spoken to him in a really long time because we
I'll
kind
pass
of...
the message on. He'll see this. He watches every podcast.
Oh, bless him.
Yeah, he
I
watches
mean, I
every
don't want to
podcast.
make him feel uncomfortable or awkward though, because I know that
No,
he
no,
would.
no.
But we broke up, and I moved to London. And I started dating this other guy, but the whole time that I was living in London, I didn't realize that I was going through depression. So I was having these anxiety attacks. Like, I actually remember touring with Hugh. Him and I went to Japan. We weren't together, but we were on tour together. It was kind of awkward because kind of still had feelings for each other and that whole sort of situation. But I remember like go through the station in one of the Japanese cities we were in, and just freezing and feeling like my throat closing over and starting to cry and like not knowing what the hell was happening to me, and Hugh being like, are you okay? Are you okay? And I was like, I don't know what's wrong. I don't know what's wrong. And like him actually kind of having to like awkwardly put his arm around me and like get me on the train. And that was kind of the start of it. And then
What year are we talking then?
we're talking like 2006.
Okay, right.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So I'm living in London. I'm living in Muswell Hill, the driest, most boring area you can live.
Yeah.
And I'm just depressed. And I'm like, I'm making music with this guy that I'm seeing, and I'm like hanging out kind of in this hip hop scene. And he was sort of like, oh, you know, fuck drum and bass, you know, it doesn't make you happy, don't do it. And so I started to like stop going to gigs, and I would get on a bus to go to the airport to go and play a gig, and I couldn't go. The anxiety was so bad that I'd call my boyfriend and be like, I can't do it. And he'd be like, come home, don't go. Rather than be like, you can do it, get on that plane, he'd be like, just come home, which was actually really detrimental and counterproductive to what I probably needed. Because what happened was I got to a point where I was like so depressed. And then there was a series of things that happened, which I'm not going to go into, but a series of things that happened when I was on tour where I had anxiety attacks on stage. And then to counter that, I'd drink too much and then be really drunk and then couldn't handle myself and then definitely couldn't go on stage, and was like just I just didn't know what was going on with me. I'd never had anxiety or depression before. I feel like it's always been a part of my personality that's always been there in the shadows, but it wasn't until I was at my real weakest point where I felt like I didn't know who I was anymore.
Sorry to hear that, man. Sorry. No, I'm dead sorry, man. Sorry to hear that. Do you know what I mean?
So it was really hard. Oh, I can't believe I'm crying.
That's okay. Sorry to hear that.
And then I was like, I am going to quit drum and bass. I just didn't want to do it anymore. And then I broke up with that guy, or he dumped me because I wasn't the person that he met. But I don't think he helped me. He totally gaslit me and was not a very positive person to be around. But I went back to New Zealand, and I was hanging out with some of my boys from back in the day, some of my really good friends, and I remember saying, you know, just getting real wasted New Year's with them, and we're in the hotel room and I'm drinking this bottle of whiskey and I'm like, I don't know who I am anymore, and I just miss drum and bass and I can't do it without Ronnie, and I just do, you know, on this one. And they were like, Tali, man, what the fuck? Where is the little girl from the dairy farm who was like, I'm going to do this? Where's the girl who was like, I'm going to England regardless of what anybody says? You know, you don't need a manager. You don't need a label. You don't even need an agent. Like, you just go over there and go back and fight and do what you've always done. And they just really lit a fire under my ass, I guess. And I came back to England and I went through a whole lot of, I started like running heaps, journaling, doing positive affirmations, like manifestations, that whole kind of thing. I joined Tanya at UMC because I was like, I want a female agent, and she just got me. She was like, you know what, you don't feel like you want to go to a gig? I'm not going to make you feel shit. You've got your period and you can't go? I'm not going to make you feel bad about it. Like, you know, rather than my last agency, which really felt like it was like money, go do the work, Tanya was like, mental health first. Her and Leroy SS took me under their wing and really, really nurtured me very much back to health, the two of them. Not only them, but when I said that I wanted to quit drum and bass, Shimon got in touch with me from Audio Porn and was like, I've heard you said you're going to quit drum and bass. No, you're not. Not before you've made another record. And I'll make it if I have to. So I just little by little started to regain my sense of self. I remember going and playing a gig with Bookham up in Birmingham, and I was so anxious to play. It was one of my first gigs back. And I stood in the corner and I was just like so worried about what people would think of me and what they would say about me. And I remember I just got on the mic and I closed my eyes and I just channeled that little girl again. And at the end, I remember Bookham just reaching over and doing that to me. Whoops. And everyone clapping. And my friends just being like, oh, I think it was Bookham was like, I don't know where you've been, Tali, but you're back.
Yeah. Oh,
and
that's
I was
lovely.
like, I'm back. So then from then I just started doing more gigs. I recorded my album Dark Days, High Nights with Shimon and a few other people on that. Worked with Dirty Phonics in Paris. And then, playing more shows. I went and did some stuff with Easy Rollers. I did some stuff with Dope Ammo. Just really started like just saying yes to loads of opportunities and kind of just building back my confidence.
Yeah.
And then I remember I won Best Female MC at the Drum and Bass Awards. And that's when Lady MC first reached out to me because we were booked to play together.
Yes.
And I was like, do you reckon they put us together because they knew that that we had this beef,
Yeah,
even though I never had any beef? And she was like, of course they did, Tali. And I was like, but we smashed that set, didn't we? She goes, we did. We got on there and we were absolutely gracious and we smashed it. And then afterwards, she sent me that apology message. And that felt like another part of that puzzle.
Releasing.
And like that toxicity and that kind of stuff. And then I met my beautiful husband in Hoxton Square one night and fell in love, and he was just so supportive, just super encouraging. And then we moved to New Zealand. We went to New Zealand and got married. And when we were there, he's like, why are we living in a one-bedroom flat in Hackney when we could be living in a house in New Zealand? And I'm like, yeah, you're right. And so I said, give me 2 years. So I came back. I did a live version of Dark Days, High Nights with a folk band called More Like Trees. I won Best MC, Female MC 2 years running again. I started doing some teaching, giving back to the community. I was working with young offenders down in Gravesend, going down there every Thursday night and doing stuff with them, lyrical stuff. And just doing things that filled my soul and made me feel good. And doing what I wanted to do.
That's lovely.
And then we moved to New Zealand in 2012.
Wow, okay.
And since then, I've written another 5 albums.
No way, you've been a busy girl.
Yeah.
You've been a
started
busy girl.
producing and composing for film and television now.
I mean, 2012, that's 11 years ago.
Yeah.
And with everything you've just now said, obviously you've given me like a roundup version.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. You've given me a roundup version, and thanks again for sharing that, because it's reality of like life, and in the entertainment game, you can have anxiety and depression and whatever across every job, or no matter what type of individual you are. But I think that in the music industry, there's this thing of, and in the entertainment industry, I should say, is this thing of like where you were there and then now you're not there anymore. Could actually cause confusion as to one's worth.
Yeah, 100%.
And you relate your success to your worth. When in fact they've got nothing to do with it.
No.
You were an entertainer. You had a job, and you were entertaining as your job. You're still the same person inside. Easy for me to say right now, sat in the chair, being here, but I totally understand that, because I've been through, not necessarily depression, but I've certainly been through that process of, Ron, you used to be the jungle don. Who are you now?
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
And it does happen to us. I would say that it probably happened to every person who has had a career in the entertainment business, and somebody says, we don't need you anymore.
But it's how you choose to see yourself rather than how other people see you. Like I had somebody say...
That's the answer to it. But in the moment, it's very difficult to see
100%.
that. Yeah.
I had a friend say to me, do you think that you were most successful when you had your UK top 40 hat and you were on the cover of DJ magazine? And I went, Absolutely not. I said, that's just commercial success. That's just a radio station and a magazine. Yes, it was exciting and it was amazing, but for me, it was a bigger rush when I won Best Electronic Artist at the New Zealand Music Awards, because I'd never been acknowledged by my own country. And that was in 2019 for my album Love and Migration, which came out on Focus Recordings. And then during lockdown, I started learning how to produce properly. I started learning how to produce back when I was dating the hip-hop guy in London. He showed me how to use Reason and then Pro Tools, how to record myself, how to vocal produce. I've always known how to do that. I'd never ever tried to produce drum and bass because I just didn't think that I should, I could. During lockdown, I got Logic, started making D&B, and I remember my husband running downstairs and being like, did you make this? Baby, that's real good. And me being like, yeah, you think it's good? And then getting my friend Tikitane, who's one of the best engineers in New Zealand, to mix the whole album down. I got funding for it. And then my mum painting the cover of the album, and then getting nominated again for Best Electronic Artist last year for an album I had made 100% myself.
That's incredible.
I'm only singing on 5 of the tracks. I've got guest vocalists, the rest of it's instrumental.
And I suppose like when your friend asked you about,
did I measure that as my success?
Did you measure that as your success? Obviously, looking at it retrospectively, now you could go, well, actually, no, it wasn't. You know, like I'd imagine that now. I'm not imagine. I don't even have to think it's imagine. I know for a fact that that the life you live now and the way how you live it is way more balanced, is way more sustainable.
Yeah.
It's way more Tali than it's ever been.
Yeah, for me, 100%, because one, I'm older, so I'm more confident and I'm more sure of myself, but also I'm not about, I'm still very ambitious and I still chase things that I want. You know, I said I wanted to be a film composer and I've started composing for film and television. You know, like that for me is future goal setting, you know, and seeing it through. That's something I can do till I'm an old lady. And so it is about having ambitions and desires, but knowing that once you hit something, you feel that low, like, oh, I've done it now. I've got no. It's about enjoying the process, the journey. I mean, if lockdown taught me anything, it's about being patient, slowing down, taking my time with what I make, not rushing to put things out, and in doing so, putting out something that's maybe not to the standard that it could be, which I have done in the past. Because also I've been doing it on my own, learning how to delegate, save my money, put it back into my business so I can pay for things that are worth my money, mastering, good mix downs, you know, excellent designers, things like that. And those are kind of the words of wisdom that I offer to newcomers coming through as well, you know, like take your time. Not everything is about this TikTok hit and rushing this and rushing that, because you know what, you could have it and it could be gone like that. And then how you're going to feel, you know? So I definitely feel if this is me being successful now, then yeah, I'm the most successful I've ever been now, because I'm measuring it against my own worth rather than what other people see as worthy.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very important statement as well that you can share to anybody new and old, or new and experienced, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, you've got to be careful what you say about different descriptions nowadays.
For sure.
But Tali, we're coming close to the end now, and I'd really like to kind of find out what you're doing now, and what does the future, short term, medium term, and long term hold for you?
Well, like I said, I'm composing now for film and television, so I've been doing that for the last couple of years. I got my first big sort of film break, I guess, writing the score for an American documentary. It's kind of like a science-based documentary coming out next year, late next year, I think. I'm also producing new music. I've got new music coming out under my own label, Rain Recordings, which I actually started back in 2020. But so when I got the rights back from Lyric on My Lip, after 15 years, I got the ownership back. I've moved it all onto my own label. So now, and I just did it with Dark Days, High Nights, the album I did with Shimon. That's just gone back onto my own label. So I've been in the process of shifting everything onto my own label as well as releasing new music. I am an educator and a music mentor for the New Zealand Music Commission. I work as an in-school music mentor, going around different schools in the North Island of New Zealand and giving advice and critique. I also do inspirational speaking, and I'm a published author. And on the side, I marry people. I'm a celebrant as well.
Oh, really? I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah, but I wrote a book back in 2019. The same year I released Love and Migration, I also released my book.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It's a fiction novel, little novel. Yeah.
Okay, right, okay.
Yeah.
Well, Tali, thank you very, very much for joining me
You're
here
so
today.
welcome, babe.
It was
Thank you so much.
lovely to hear this story, remarkable story, I think, actually,
Oh, thank
you know, of the young girl who came from that milk farm. And she wasn't milking like that. I found that out during the break, that she wasn't doing it like that.
He thought I was sitting on a pail, like pulling titties. No.
Yeah. But, I mean, it's great to have seen you anyway.
Yeah.
But to be sat here and kind of like, it's like, for me, it was like two mates catching up after such a long time of not seeing each other. And so thanks for sharing everything you've shared with us today.
It's absolutely my
I
pleasure.
wish you every success moving forward.
Thank you.
And any last words for anybody out there that you might want to share and have the last words of the podcast?
I just think take your time, enjoy the journey, and not worry so much about the end goal, because half the time the journey is what you learn from and what helps you evolve as a person and grow as a person. So really enjoy the steps it takes you to get wherever you want to go, and measure your success against yourself, what you see as worthy and not what you think other people will see of you. Because at the end of the day, you know, who gives a what people think? It's how you see yourself and how you love yourself, and that's the most important thing. So
That's beautiful. Thanks, Tali.
peace out.
She drops the mic, says, I'm out. Right. Thank you. Thank you very much.